Jeff Zeleny, from your perch covering the White House for us, what is your expectation on this Putin call that should be happening right now?
Right. I mean, a very important phone call. Obviously, it's the third time he's talked to him as president, but the first time, as you said, since the military strike in Syria. It'll be interesting to see what type of a readout, how extensive of a readout we get from this side. We definitely will get one from Moscow. And the expectation, my expectation is fairly low, actually, in terms of any huge development here. But back to the investigation. The president can call it fake news all he wants. Next week, there are going to be hearings on Capitol Hill where the Russia investigation becomes very much real, very much on television, alive, unrolling. Republicans are sort of bracing for that moment, worried about that. So the reality is it is a real investigation. Substantively, though, this phone call, we'll see exactly what he gets out of it. I wouldn't expect a lot.
A tremendous amount that will probably be unsaid on this call, right?
Right.
About everything that you just said. But look, so there's that. There's the fact that Angela Merkel was over there with Putin yesterday. President Trump does not want to get cut out of the loop on that. No matter what the tensions are, he wants this to be the U.S. and Russia talking, not the U.S. on the sidelines while Germany does that business with Russia. There are a couple other factors to watch. One is that there's a whole series of really important summits coming up, G7, NATO, and we're waiting for President Trump and Mr. Putin to meet actually in person, perhaps sometime this summer. So a lot of tension building on all of those fronts, even as Russia maintains it did not meddle in anyone's elections.
Yeah, and this call comes at a time when if you look at President Trump and how many world leaders he has met with and how many relationships he's cultivated, the reset with Russia it did not get off the ground. And it's not just because there's the investigation that's clouding over this administration, but also when you talk to people in the White House, they'll tell you that Trump sort of realized that Russia is much more problematic than he necessarily saw on the campaign, and they don't like a number of things that Vladimir Putin is doing. And in fact, the Russians asked for a meeting while the president was in Europe in May, and the White House said no, and they would push it off until later in the summer. So there's a lot, while the president is embracing all kinds of other world leaders, some of which his predecessors would not, from Egypt to the Philippines, he is not embracing Vladimir Putin.
That's a very good segue for what I was going to say now, which is that the President of the United States likes to talk. For however quick he is to rail against the media, President Trump spends a significant amount of time talking to people like us reporters. He did at least 9 interviews to commemorate his first 100 days in office, which, to be clear, we journalists, we welcome. The more, the better. And I always said the best thing about interviewing Donald Trump is that he actually answers questions, which, again, is a delight for us reporters. But when you're president and you say so much, you shape and, in many cases, reshape U.S. policy real time. The latest example is the nation's posture towards North Korea. Let's take a trip down memory lane. Well, actually, just less than 2 weeks ago, here's what the vice president told me aboard the USS Ronald Reagan in Japan.
Did you see a direct negotiation with North Korea and the U.S.?
I think not at this time.
It's pretty clear that the position there from the vice president was that the administration would not negotiate in any bilateral talks. And now we are hearing from the president, never mind direct diplomatic talks, he's talking about personally having a conversation with the rogue regime leader, Kim Jong-un himself.